Hi everyone, and welcome to my chats with dads in business, where I speak to busy dads who are running or leading in businesses about how they manage their energy and their focus and their health while spinning so many plates. If you're watching live or you've got any questions, please let us know, say hi or drop them in the comments and we'll get to those. And today I'm delighted to welcome Ian Harrison. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name's Ian Harrison. I'm the Operations Director from Affirmative Finance.
Fab, yeah. And thanks for joining me today, Ian. And I know from speaking to you previously that you are quite a busy chap. So you've got, how many children have you got and grandchildren have you got?
3 children, 20, 26 and 30.
Yeah.
And 4 grandchildren. One's 6, the oldest is 6 on Friday. Then I've got twin boys of 3, and then the youngest just coming up to nearly 18 months.
Cool. So very busy man indeed then, with lots of responsibilities for family and kids.
Sort of.
Yeah. And you kind of, you sort of, by proxy, you are influencing them as well, aren't you, in how you conduct yourself and how you look after yourself as well, because they're going to be looking at you as kind of a bit of a hero figure. So that's quite interesting, I find, as well.
It's quite funny. I've got a Batman cape in the corner, but I haven't got it on today. I can wear the mask if you want.
You don't need to wear it on here, but it's nice to know that you are embracing that hero figure. And obviously, you know, being in the role you've got professionally as well, you've got a lot of responsibility there as well. So you certainly are kind of, you know, you're in a position where you've had to really understand yourself and how you balance your energy levels and your health as well, which is really why it was interesting to get you on and get to talk to you. So the purpose of these conversations really is to talk to people like yourselves and kind of get some, you know, behind the scenes sort of tips and information. And I like to start by sort of asking you, you know, is there anything in terms of managing your health and your energy that you've had to deliberately work on over the years in order to sort of get control and be in the position that you're in now?
I've probably had about 2 or 3 big things that changed my focus on everything. You know what I mean? And as a joke, I know it's not oil of Olay, but I'm now 61. When I first turned 18, I'd always had asthma as a kid. And even though I was a very, very keen footballer, my mum used to wrap me in cotton wool over winter, saying I couldn't get it because if I got a cold, it went straight onto my chest.
Yeah.
Literally the week after I was 18, I got a chest infection, which hospitalized me. So I actually collapsed, blue light to the hospital, and I woke up. In, it wasn't A&E, it was critical care, wondering what had gone on. And literally where people say when they die, they see the white light.
Yeah.
I saw the white light of my grandmother, which was a very, very sort of scary moment. I then had a similar chest infection again a month later, ended up in hospital again. And it then happened 3 times. So each time I got a chest infection. By the time I come out the 3rd time, they turned around and said, you do realise that you put a little bit of a strain on your heart, the way you're breathing, etc. That's you. No football, no running, nothing. So at the age of 18, they basically wrote me off. So I turned around to the doctor. So this was probably the end of March, beginning of April. I turned around to the doctor and said, I'm going to run the marathon, Liverpool Marathon, which was in September. So I did, and I did it in under 4 hours. So I went from being this person who relied on an inhaler to someone who never used an inhaler. From the back of that, when I was 18, it was just as the Falklands were kicking off.
Yeah.
So myself and another guy that I worked with had the patriotic duty of where we were going to sign up. So just as about we'd been mentioning we were going to try and go into the Paris.
Yeah.
And he used to run marathons with me. So we were and we used to play football together, 5-a-side and 11-a-side. And it got to the point where just as we were about to go to the recruitment office and sign up, Stephen needed a look at his knee. So if you go back 40 years ago, it wasn't a case of like a small entry. They cut his knee open, like the keyhole surgery wasn't quite keyhole. So he had to lay up for 6 months. But I went into the Royal Marine Reserves. So I then had another element on top of my fitness because I was working towards a berry. So through being able to run, I was then able to sort of run in boots and then swim with the kit on. At the same time, about the same time, I started to hit the gym properly and really trained. So from being wrote off within a year, I wouldn't say I was training elite, or I suspect being at a Marines level is comparative to being at a Premiership footballer. So 20-mile, 30-mile hikes with a backpack and a rifle started becoming quite standard for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, really that does place you in a really high top percentile of people, doesn't it, when you look at just general population?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you kind of, what do you think was the key to you kind of being able to do that then, after being told by the doctors you couldn't do any of that stuff?
Exactly.
What was it that?
Exactly that, being told I couldn't do it.
Right. Okay. So it was a mindset thing.
It was a conscious rebellion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like nowadays, it's like people are wrote off, and there's what I call lazy people on this, like Ozempic. They've give up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of having the positive mindset, they've done it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's sort of, I made the mistake of playing football when I was 18, 19, and I got a tackle. I got quite a bad tackle from behind, which displaced my knee. And even though it wasn't quite dislocated, it put a stress on my knee. One of the offshoots of that is I couldn't run in boots. I could run in training shoes and I could run in football boots, but I couldn't run in the boots. And I actually had a medical discharge in the Marines because I couldn't run in the boots. And it was just so frustrating because it was a course where I wanted to go down. But it was then sort of finding a job what I liked. I'd worked in a painting and trademark, which was office based. When I first left school, I actually worked on a farm for 3 months during the summer holidays. I knew that wasn't for me. And indirectly, I started working within finance, as a trainee IFA and mortgage broker. But the issue I had at the time is people weren't buying me for me. They were buying me for what I looked like. So when I was 22, 23, I probably still looked 16, 17. I couldn't go into a pub without being asked an age or ID. So when I'm trying to sell pensions and mortgages and life insurance to someone, I knew they weren't buying me for like looking like a child. Yeah. So I then moved into the other side of finance, which is went to work for a brokerage. And that's when my career started to pick up and take off. I then morphed into different banks and finance institutions. I went through a couple of American banks, and I was quite lucky that I worked in Liverpool city centre, and where the office was situated, there was a local gym. So as I finished work of the night, my friends would be walking past and we'd all go to the gym together.
Yeah, okay.
After about 2 or 3 years, I got promoted to assistant manager and then manager. I then found, because I had more responsibility, I couldn't go to the gym, so I couldn't get out at time every night. So what I did is I adjusted my training to fit in with the staff. So their lunches would be 12 to 1, 1 till 2. So I'd go for my lunch and go for the workout between 2 and 3. Yeah. And then sort of did a cardio session in the night time. So I morphed and changed my training. Sometimes I went for a run before work, but I was starting work at 7:30, 8 o'clock of the night. And then that progressed. As I progressed from different management roles with different banks, I always used to make sure I'd train for at least an hour and a half every day, But as you progress, you've got more responsibility. I was literally working 12 hours a day, and sometimes I couldn't make it. At the same time, my eldest boy was about 5 or 6, and he started to get looked at when he was playing football. The youngest, I used to drag them along every Saturday morning. The banker was working, and you had to work the Saturday morning. So it was then the annoying thing of taking my son into Liverpool city centre at 7 o'clock of the morning, working till 9:30, and then dragging him to a football match, leaving him there, going back to the office, and then going back to pick him up or arranging for someone else to pick him up. So that was now 21 years ago. I joined sort of Affirmative. I wouldn't say I packed in the other roles for the sake of football, but it was more of a work-life balance, sort of with what I love doing and my children. And it's like my wife turns around and says to me, I haven't got a job. I've got a hobby that I'm quite well paid for, that I love. So it's that. But even over the last 21 years, there's been circumstances that have changed and morphed the way I train. I always used to train overnight. And then what I found was trying to fit it in with this job. I'm away from home quite a bit. And with this job, you're out on the road, and pardon my French, you're sitting on your arse in your car, usually listening to music, or you're on the phone constantly to clients. The biggest pitfall is when you're living in a hotel or when you're traveling is meal deals. So you tend to get like a sandwich and a packet of crisps and a bottle of Coke, or maybe a bar of chocolate because you're in the car feeling a bit down. If when you're first being a bit naive, and even at the age of 40, I was a bit naive. You go into a hotel, didn't really like hotel food, end up going for an Indian or a Chinese. You know what I mean? So it then gets to the point where you start sticking on a few of these middle-aged spread pounds. And then sort of my focus on training was size. I used to try and go as big and as heavy as I could. So I was probably at my heaviest was about 16 stone. So now I make sure I'm trimmed down between 12.7 and 13 stone. So I changed the focus totally, and that was by pure chance. I had we were quite lucky in where we've got Vitality. So with Vitality, you get a free watch if you do your steps. So what I actually did is I booked in for a health check. And with the health check, it come up, and I was quite shocked that it said I was obese. So, and I was like, how can I be obese? And I'm looking at myself, and I've got a 54-inch chest, and you know what I mean? I've got a little bit of weight on me, but that was like sort of with training. And I'm thinking, I can't be obese. And I questioned it, and I just said, how can I be obese? I'm in the gym, I'm quite active. And they went, well, it's still the same strain on your heart, whether it's muscle or weight, it's the same heart. You know what I mean? Even with training. And I look back, and my grandfather, he died of a ruptured aorta in his sleep. And my mum had a triple bypass and a new valve fitted. And I just thought, oh God, if there's something genetic and there's a bit of heart strain. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to change the way I train. You know what I mean? I'm going to put a lot more emphasis on different things. So I made the conscious decision of dropping 3 stone. So I got into a healthy BMI range. I think the BMI was about 32. It's now down to 25. And I dropped, but I did it by keto. And I actually dropped the 3 stone probably within a 12-week period. And it was just at the start of lockdown. So, I was quite lucky that I'd managed to buy a full gym so I could train in the garden. I was going for a walk every day. And the one thing I never had access to was a proper body scanner machine. So by the time I got to the scanning machine, I'd actually found out I'd lost over 1 stone of muscle and 2 stone of fat. So I then spent the next year building the muscle back on. but building a muscle pack on then gives you a little bit of fat. So it was a juggle, but then reading into different things, I worked out sort of your macros, so your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. So I then broke it down with my diet.
Yeah.
With that, it then balanced out. So I made sure I was getting 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat. Per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
To be honest, as long as I never went over 2,000 calories, I knew it was fairly safe with what carbs and fats I ate. So I didn't actually measure them. I was just started recording food on MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
Since then, I've sort of kept shape on it.
Yeah. I think, and that's one of the keys, you know, you've covered a lot there, and that journey you've taken has been really, really good. You know, there's pros and cons to putting on that weight in terms of muscle and building strength, because like you said, in order to build muscle, you have to be in a calorie surplus, and therefore you tend to put on a little bit of fat with it as well. And obviously, you know, people like bodybuilders will do that deliberately, but then they'll cut weight in mostly in the form of water so that their muscles are visible. And that in and of itself is a bit of a scientific kind of mission, and can be unhealthy if it's not done well. So generally, for long term, you want to be, you know, you want to sort of fill your natural frame really, and try to maintain as much muscle mass as you can, just for health, which is
it's a bit of vanity as well.
Well, there is that element to it, isn't there? Yeah, because you look different as well, don't you? So that's empowering to yourself, you know, for people to sort of look at you and comment and going, oh, you're looking buff, or you're looking good, or, you know, whatever words they're going to use. And then I think, you know, long term, what you're doing now is you're maintaining that healthy frame essentially, because you're looking at your food intake. You understand that calories really are the key to maintaining that weight, and then protein just supports your metabolic health. So it supports lean tissue, bone density, muscle. Obviously, protein also feeds all of your growth and repair, so for all of the cells in your body. So it's vitally important. So it sounds like you've gone on this really nice journey, you know, where you've had to sort of battle a bit of adversity. You've then gone like into almost elite fitness. Then you've gone into your career and things have dropped, and then you've sort of taken control of it and realized, you know, where you need to be. So you sort of compressed a whole life's journey almost into 10 minutes.
There's another part of the journey which I didn't put in there. I think it was about, I'm just trying to work out, it was about 14 years ago. Probably most people will recognise it from the World Cup when England were in South Africa.
Yeah.
About 3 months before the first game, which was England versus South Africa, I'd started training for a triathlon. So being in inner city Liverpool and finishing work sort of 5 o'clock or 5 of the night, you can't really go for a swim in the pool, in the gym, run up the stairs in a pair of Speedos and then jump on a bike or go for a run. So what I started doing was a triathlon in a bit of reverse. I'd go for a run, then go on the bike and then go for a swim.
Yeah.
So at the time I was absolutely flying. And you know where you've got your different sizes of marathon. Triathlon. I wasn't doing an Ironman, but it was the shorter version which you see around most cities with the 10K run, the 1K swim and that. So I was absolutely flying while I was training. At the same time, I coached kids football for 20 years as well. So one night I was playing a training game between the 16s and the 12s, and the 16s kicked, pardon the French again, kicked shit out of me. So every time I got the ball, there was one of them snapping at my ankles, giving me a kick and a knock. And I woke up. I always used to make sure they did a proper warm down, like all the kids and that. So on the Friday morning, I woke up and my leg was rock solid, sore, and really, really painful. And I turned around to my missus and I went, you know what? I'm sure I've got a blood clot in my leg. And she was going, are you sure? And I went, yeah. So phoned the doctors, got an immediate appointment, went down to see my doctor. And I said, I think I've got this blood clot. And he goes, no. He goes, you've torn a calf muscle. And I went, there's no way I've torn a calf muscle. I went, I warmed down last night. I was playing football and all like this. And I went, if the torn a calf muscle, I'd have knew then. So he's going, no, I don't think it's a blood clot. So part of the practice, they've got a private physio. So I booked into the private physio. So as I was there was this lady with all the medical badges on and all the certificates. And she said, what were you doing? And I said, playing football. And she went, on what surface? And I went, AstroTurf. And she went, you do realise AstroTurf's got fleas in it. And I think you've got a flea bite on your sciatic nerve and it's inflamed your leg. And I went, okay. So as I'm laying there, she's manipulating the back of me thigh and my calf. And she went, oh, when I'm pressing this, the fluid's coming off it. And I went, oh, brilliant. Like that. So that was then. And when I got home, when my wife had my daughter, who's now 20, if anyone's ever been to Costco, they must have seen those big massages with infrared. Like they're like an industrial plane. So I'm laying on the bed and my wife's got one of these back massages going down the back of my thigh, down the back of my calf. And she's going, oh, that fluid's come off your leg. And I went, all right. I'd booked in to see I'd booked into the Bupa hospital to see a sports injury specialist on the Monday. But by the Saturday afternoon, I had no symptoms whatsoever. No pains in my leg, it's all gone. Went to see the specialist, and he said, the doctor thinks I had a torn calf muscle. And he went, no. I thought I had a blood clot. And he goes, I can't see one. So that was it. So I resumed training for the triathlon. But the good thing was, as I was training, I always used to have a heart strap on. You know, do you remember the old Polar?
Yeah.
Thing. So I always used to be quite aware of what my heart rate and as I was training. So every night I was perfectly fine. After about a month in, I started getting pains in my sides. Really, really bad. As I was like I'd be training and I was fine. It was more in the recovery. So next thing you know, I went back to the doctors, even though I hadn't been for years. I went back because I knew there was something up. And they then told me I had an intercostal muscle tear. So I'd booked another physio because I didn't trust it. So this other physio was then massaging my sides and loosening my back up and all different things. It then got a bit worse about a month later. And the first thing I noticed is when I go into the office in Manchester, I park about just over, I'd say half a mile away, maybe just a bit less, but it's a very, very gradual gradient up to the office. And I'm always on the phone to like staff, brokers, clients. And as I get out the car and I'm walking up, I noticed I couldn't walk and talk at the same time. I started to get breathless and I was going a bit dizzy. So I thought, this isn't right at all. So I booked another doctor's appointment, went into the doctor's, said it, and they went, so we're going to send you for an x-ray. So that was on the Thursday. On the following Wednesday, I felt terrible. Imagine having the most, where people say they've got flu and it's like a man flu. When you get real flu, you're aching, your body's aching, probably same as when people had COVID. Yeah. So by the next Wednesday, I was feeling absolutely terrible. It was probably the worst I've ever felt in my life. And on the way into work, I felt dizzy. And I just thought, I can't do this. And I come home from work early. And as I got home, my youngest son, he'd have been 12 at the time. I said to him, I'm going to have to go down to the doctor's. I'm not right here. And my doctor's was probably half a mile away, if that. And I said, I can't walk. I went, can you sit in the car with me? And I went, I'm going to drive slow. If I collapse, just pull the steering wheel to the curb and the car will stop because it's automatic. I went, don't worry about that. If it collapses, just pull it and pull the handbrake. So I got into the doctor's, and it was a different doctor, and the doctor's face was like, and I went, what's up? And they went, just to let you know, your x-ray showed it's got a huge shadow on one of your lungs. And I went, are you telling me I've got cancer? And they went, no, it mightn't be cancer, but it could be some sort of fungal infection that's gone into your lung. And I was going, I've been coming here with pains in my chest. I mean, like over the last few months, and you keep telling me it's nothing. So they booked me in for a biopsy on the next morning. And it was in a hospital about half a mile away from here. And in my house, we've got 2 floors like above where I am now, and me and my wife are in the top floor. So in the morning, I got up at 6 o'clock, and as I was getting up, I went dizzy, and I knew I was going to collapse. So I knelt down. And put my hands on the bed, and next thing you know, I keeled over. My wife had just gone downstairs, and she'd heard the bang of me. I mean, if it had been standing up, it'd have been a lot louder. She then runs upstairs. She then panics and runs down 2 flights of stairs to use the phone in the living room, even though there's a phone in the bedroom, 2 mobile phones, a phone on the next floor in each room. And next thing you know, an ambulance shows up at the door. So they was treating it as a suspected heart attack, but were then quite shocked that I'd come round within about a minute and that, just laid down to get my wherewithal and my brain kicked into gear. And I walked down the stairs and out. And it was the first occasion that the kids had, because it was half term, the kids had friends round. So we had to get the mother-in-law round to look at all the kids and all different things.
Yeah.
So I then get plugged onto this machine in the ambulance, but I can't see the readout above. It was above and behind me. So I get rushed into the hospital. As I'm rushed in the hospital, I get straight taken right the way through A&E, no waiting. I'm in basically what I'd assume would have been a crash team. Luckily enough for me, one of the doctors trained in the gym. So he comes up to me and he goes, are you on steroids? And I went, no. And he went, have you taken any enhancers at all? And I was like, no. I went, you see me in the gym, I don't train that, like, I'm not training like that. But this was still when I was a bit chunky. So he went, what do you think's up? And I went, I think I had a blood clot 3 months ago, and it's been missed by my doctor. And the irony is my doctor and his son used to train in the same gym as me. So there's all these doctors in the gym. Yeah. So he went, oh, so I then had an echo reading on the chest, and they come back and said, your pulmonary artery is more than double the size of what it should be. What you've been doing, because it explains about training for the triathlon and all that. He said, he goes, you should be dead. He goes, there's no way you can survive what I think it is. He goes, you should be dead. He went, but because you've been training, your body's been craving oxygen, and it's got it to the point before it ruptured. You know what I mean? So I got sent for an MRI scan, and it's actually come back that it was probably one of the biggest blood clots that anyone's ever survived from. They called it broken glass. You know, if you'd imagine like your lung filled, but it looks like broken glass inside it.
Yeah.
So I then was put in this room, and they went, have you seen this? And my heart rate was 186. When I was training full out, I used to get my heart rate up to about 180 to 200. So when I was like full on, I was used to that. But this was when I was laying motionless, and I was like, Christ! I went, it wasn't even like that when I've been on the bike and running for the last few weeks. And they went, so they then gave me the option of like sort of, oh, there you go, or they give me this infusion of heparin, which thinned my blood down, and for the next 3 hours, every minute my heart rate had dropped by 1 beat. So it went 186, 185 until it went down to about 55, 60. I then was in the critical care, or HDU, the high dependency unit. I've been in critical care, and this is how long ago it was. The doctor that had come in originally to see me come back down to double check. No, like it was okay, because he sort of semi-knew me from the gym. Yeah. And I went, I'm going to miss the football. And I actually watched the England versus South Africa game kick off on a black. what I mean? So you can imagine that's how old I actually watched it on a BlackBerry. I was then in hospital for the next week on different infusions. And then I had another scare while I was in hospital because I was laying there, bored, reading a book, and the nurse come in to do a reading. So as she was going through my temperature and my pulse, she ran out the room. And I was like, Jesus, what's going on here? What's up now? So as she's gone out, the doctor runs back in. And what it was is the nurse had never seen anyone with a heart rate below 45. So the doctor had to explain to her that because of the sort of cardio fitness, it was the heart rate. She was going, well, most people in here on 60 to 80 beats a minute. And she went, his was closer to 42. And I was like, bloody hell. You know what I mean? So I then had it where I had 6 months because they reckon the insides of my lung was a bit scarred, It wasn't scarred, but effectively there was a bit of scar with the clot. So I then had 6 months of total inactivity and rest. But to keep it up, I went to the gym every night for a steam or a sauna. You know what I mean? So I had my cardiovascular system working.
Yeah.
The steam and sauna. But touch wood, that was what, 12, it must be 12 years ago, or 14 years ago. So that was the last ever time I've been to a doctor's apart from a COVID jab or a flu jab.
Yeah, you know wow. What a journey. That's insane.
Yeah, but it's just I see people sort of where they say they haven't got time to train. Everyone's got time to train. I get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning and I go for a 5-mile walk and it just sets my day up. As I mentioned before, Vitality have got watches. If you do 12,500 steps a day, you get it for nothing. You know what I mean? It's a no-brainer to do that before breakfast. You know what I mean? So it's
I think you're right. You know, a lot of it is just about priority, isn't it? So if your health becomes a priority, then you give it time, don't you? And you take that action. Most people that sort of say I haven't got time, it's a bit of an excuse and a brush off because they've got other things that they prioritize instead of their health at that moment.
Yeah. But as I mentioned before, one of the things is you progress in the business. It's like tomorrow. It's like tonight. Tomorrow's a big day within the finance world. You've got the NACFB Expo in the NEC in Birmingham. Now, I reckon the majority of people will be going to one of these pre-parties, drinks, curry.
Yeah.
Probably get in about 2 o'clock, up early to go to the show. And don't get me wrong, I've been there in the past and I've done it. Probably over the last 12 years in work, or 14 since that, I make sure, I wouldn't say I've become a recluse, and it's not that I'll go out and have a drink, you know what I mean? But if I'm working away from home now, I'd sooner pick a hotel with the gym in, you know what I mean? So it's like tonight, I'll go down, we'll set the stand up, and then I'll go to the gym for a workout.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've got some of my staff with me, and probably they'll do the steam and sauna after. For someone who was, I wouldn't say I was an avid meat eater. I'd eat chicken and fish, but I now eat quite a bit of steak to get the protein levels up. And probably I find a steak and a salad's probably the go-to meal when I'm out and about now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Is finding those tools that work. You know, eating a steak gets you arguably more protein than a lot of other lean meat sources.
I'll tell you what,
it's satisfying as well, you know.
The best one's ostrich. Get ostrich.
Ostrich, okay. Yeah, I've never tried that, to be honest. I've tried crocodile and I've had a few other weird and wonderfuls.
Crocodile's all right. It's like a fishy chicken.
Yeah.
But ostrich is like a proper meat. Really low cholesterol, low fat, high protein. It's nice. It's got a gamey taste to it, but it's my go-to. Have a look every now and then. Aldi or one of the supermarkets put it on offer, and I literally go in and buy the whole display and stick it in the freezer because it's that hard to come. I've usually got about 2 or 3 months worth in the freezer.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of it in the UK, so I'll have to have a little look for some of that and give it a try. Yeah. Well, we've touched on quite a lot, obviously, through that, and it's a hell of a journey you've been on. So one of the things I like to ask the guests that come on is about their sort of daily non-negotiables. So you've sort of said about your morning routine and your work and your walk. Have you got any other kind of non-negotiables when it comes to managing your sort of health and your energy levels that you sort of always deliver on?
John, it sounds a bit weird. I'm really pumping Apple Watches here, but you can set targets on it. So, and the worst part for me is I'm a bit of a technophobe. So there's certain aspects of things I've got to play around with it for a bit. And I didn't realize I've hit my daily targets for the last 4 years. Well, no, it's nearly 5 years where I've got a minimum of 1,000 calories burned, at least 12 hours of activity. And what's the other one? There's another one.
Exercise, isn't it?
So exercise minutes of at least an hour a day. But I usually do that within the walk anyway. What I find to do is 99 times out of 100, I'll be in the gym of a night, or I've got a spinning bike upstairs. So I try and switch it where I do one night weights, and I've now changed the way I train again, because you get into a mindset where you do 3 or 4 sets of 10 of a weight. So I now do a warm-up weight and then I push it. So if I'm doing 8 to 10, I then get to a stage where I'm only doing 3s and 4s. So I'm now at the back. After we're saying it's slimmed down, I'm now at the back where I'm building back up again. You know what I mean? So I'm not bulking up, but I'm just actually conscious that at 61, I need more muscle in me for when I don't want to be a skinny 70-year-old.
So, absolutely. You get too fragile and too frail, don't you? So, and you don't have to get massive to be strong. You can, you don't have to eat in a big surplus. You can just eat reasonably well to support your energy, and you push heavy weights and you'll be strong anyway. Yeah,
it's just that the way I'm working it out at the moment in time, if I can squat more than my weight, I'm bench pressing more than nearly 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 my weight. I'm pulling down more than twice my weight. So there's big things, but I'm also conscious that I've got to eat the protein and the carbs to make sure I can build up again now. So it's the vanity was trying to be a 60-year-olds with a 6-pack on the beach. So, and I don't think there's many of them. But a funny thing is my wife's just had a bit of, I wouldn't say a health scare. She's just had a bit of investigation. We went into Randox Health the other day to do a blood test. And while we were there was a body analysis machine. So me being me is, I paid for all these tests. Can I ever go with the body machine for nothing? So I went onto the machine, and the guy measured me, took my height, weight, and all like that, puts my date of birth in. So I went onto the machine, and he comes back in, and he goes, I made a mistake with your date of birth. Can I just do it again? And I went, what have you got? And he went, 1964. I went, that's right. And he went, bloody hell. And as I looked, it's got my biological age or metabolic age as being 46. So I was like, no, what? I'll go for that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think the reason you've got that is because you have actually invested the time and been intentional with looking after your health. If you'd have been out, not caring about what you're eating, not necessarily training regularly, getting on the partying, it doesn't have to be often, but if it's a regular occurrence, then that's enough to just sideline that and not be able to do that sort of thing.
I've had 3 weekends where I'd not been out much, and then I had 3 weekends where 3 groups. I went to 3 gigs for 3 Friday nights on the run. And it was just one of them. It was just like weird. You know what I mean? And each time I had a drink, I'm going on holiday in 5 weeks. I'll have a drink and something sweet every night, probably to excess, quite a few nights, because I'll be on the karaoke absolutely bladdered. But it's just one of them where it's all in a balance. But on holiday, I could get in at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I'm up by 6:30, 7 o'clock walking along the beach by myself. You know what I mean? I still do exactly the same on holiday, walking the 5 or 6 miles every morning.
Yeah, that's fab. And like you said, I love the point there about balance, because that's really what it's all about. And when I work with clients, it's it's about striking that balance. First of all, getting that understanding of what foods are doing for you, what your hydration is doing for you, what your training is doing for you, and how to make it work for you. But then it's about getting that balance right so that you still can go and enjoy your life and have a little bit of excess now and again. It's just, you know, modern days, a lot of people are just edging more towards the excess more often than not, and that's not going to serve your body over time. So
well, there may be one of the guys who works with me on, and he was, how can I put it? He was probably eating a little bit to excess, and he went for tests the other week, and he was pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks later, he tipped the balance, and he actually was declared as diabetic. And my mum was diabetic, and I always remember that one of my best friends is diabetic. He's lost a leg. You know what I mean? He's 60 years of age with one leg, and he can't get around. And the guy from work was diagnosed as sort of diabetic, and he was like, Jesus, what shall I do? And I went, to be honest, mate, I went, you're type 2, drop your weight down, and you can cure yourself. You don't want to start taking this metformin, and you don't want to start being insulin dependent and on these tablets. And I went, it's as simple as dropping your weight. So he was like, no. And I went, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a strict keto diet. And I went through his macros and his proteins, and I worked it out. And he lost about 1.5 stone, 2 stone. When he went for the next checkup off at the diabetes clinic with his doctor, he was non-diabetic. Yeah. So for the sake of losing that 1.5 stone, 2 stone, it saved him from being on these tablets for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, it's a slippery slope. Once you start on that medication and start to rely on it, you just sort of get stuck with it, and you rely on it. And then, you know, if your mindset is that you then aren't going to make changes because you found this sort of settled lifestyle, you're ultimately going to shorten your life as well, and your quality of health and the quality of life. So yeah, I mean, for those that are getting into sort of pre-diabetic type 2 diabetes, weight loss is usually the key. And so yeah, you know, well done for stepping in and kind of helping out and getting that moving, because you know
the other big kicker for me, which I had about when you're working on the roads and when you're working face to face with people, one of the big things is everywhere you go, it's always a cup of coffee. Yeah. And I got to the point where I was quite caffeine addicted. So, and if anyone has a Zira espresso, you know what I mean, the really nice coffee every morning, I'd have 2 of them. And then I was in the office, we used to have the best ever coffee machine, you know, the little capsules with the nicest coffee, and they were only little cups. And I'd be sitting there and I'd have 2 an hour. They were that nice. But when I was coming home of a night, I always used to have it that I wouldn't drink coffee after 6 o'clock. But I'd be laying in bed that wired. I wasn't probably getting to sleep till midnight. Even though I go to bed 10:30, 11 o'clock, I wasn't sleeping. Maybe midnight, even 2 o'clock on the worst nights. Yeah. I had a bit of I wouldn't say a medical issue. It was something daft when I come back off a holiday. And I Googled what could be wrong. And one of the things that came up, it had caffeine can irritate your body. Yeah. So I thought I'll try not drinking coffee. And I don't like tea. I don't like the taste of it. So I looked for something a bit different and warm. I didn't want hot chocolate because of the sugar content. So I actually started drinking mint and nettle and mint tea. So it was one of them. But within 2 or 3 days, as soon as I put my head on the pillow to sleep, I slept 7-8 hours, bang, right out. I then started having the shakes for 3 days with the withdrawal. But after that, I then found jasmine tea, like Chinese teas, like peppermint. I was drinking peppermint or jasmine green tea. And I've done that for the last 12 years as well. But I've got to the point where I wouldn't say addicted to it, but it goes hand in hand with what I said to you before about the blood clot. The rationale for the blood clot is I know it was a kick in the leg. But the other thing it could have been was me sitting in the car. So if you're on an airplane, they always tell you to get up.
Yeah.
And stay hydrated. The reason they tell you to stay hydrated is you're getting up and moving to go to the toilet. So what I do now is I take a flask, like a big thing, like the big cups. I have a green tea in there. And by the time I've drank it, it's about an hour and a half into my journey. Every hour and a half, 90 minutes to stop, PT, charge the car, PT, charge the car. You know what I mean? And it now makes sure I can't get another. If it was that which caused the blood clot and not the kick.
Yeah.
And then, but I also make sure I'm not in the same position. I'll get out and physically stretch, lean down, like bend my back, so I'm not stiff after long journeys.
Yeah. No, that's fab. Yeah, we've gone rattling through 45 minutes now, so I'm just conscious of time. You've provided a huge amount of inspiration and tips for anyone that's watching that could use them, so we've covered a lot in today's, and you've had quite an interesting journey with some big ups and downs as well. So thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been fascinating, and I think there's a lot of positive tips in there that people can take from this that are going to potentially help them on their journey as well. What if anyone wants to get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that if they want to have a chat about things or catch up with you?
Email or phone. I mean, I'm always available. I'm always in the car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've got a 2-hour drive in a minute.
Yeah, cool. So they can message you on LinkedIn then as well and get in touch if they ever want to sort of push the brains a bit further or get in touch.
If anyone wants to get in touch on LinkedIn, I'll send them my number. In fact, my phone number's on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, so you can ring it at any point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's a valuable resource, and really appreciate you sharing your story and your tips with us. It's been really good. Thanks very much.
All right, see you in a bit.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Bye, everyone.